Welcome to the Embodied Naturopath podcast. I'm Chantal Oxley, a qualified naturopath and Reiki practitioner, helping women to understand the connection between their physical health, emotional well-being, and the nervous system. And in today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about perimenopause and menopause, and in a different lens. I actually had one of my listeners reach out to me and ask if I could talk about helping to support women through menopause without using HRT. And I guess I just want to preface that firstly, I can't, tell you what you can and can't do regards to medication because that's out of my scope of practice. But also, I wanted to sort of take this on a different lens. So firstly, as a naturopath myself and supporting other women through perimenopause and menopause, I certainly do see, the benefits of using HRT or MHT with some people that, really tried a lot of things, but they just need that extra little bit of support. So I'm actually not against using it. And fortunately, the research that's come out more recently is more favourable for hormonal therapies, whereas previously it was, discussed as, being a higher risk for different type of cancers. So it's good news for women that are really struggling through perimenopause and menopause. So I'll start to say that first. And then I guess the other thing to note is, the definitions. There's so much discussion on social media about, maybe it's just perimenopause, maybe it's menopause. And I just want to clarify the difference. So perimenopause can actually start around the age of 35. And that could be up until 10 years before a woman hits menopause. So during that time, that's where there may be some fluctuations of hormones, particularly estrogen and progesterone. You may have, raises in estrogen, and then also you may have drops in progesterone, and it's a bit of a roller coaster. So 1 month may be different to the other, and that can lead up until menopause. And so with menopause, actual definition is not having a menstrual cycle for 12 months. And then that means it classifies you into menopause. So I just want to share that because there seems to be a little bit of confusion perhaps of the definitions of those as well. So I guess the other thing I wanted to share about the question, or, relate back to the question that was about, what can you do to support menopause or to support perimenopause throughout that, the phase, but also throughout, whether it's with or without hormonal therapies. So firstly, I would actually suggest, looking after your nervous system. And I know that's something obviously I do talk a bit about, but in my clinical practice, I've definitely seen women really struggle through menopause, particularly with hot flushes and anxiety when they're actually not looking after themselves or not prioritizing themselves. And so what I've seen is, obviously the exacerbation of these symptoms, because they're tending to be the women that tend to put themselves last. So they're looking after everybody. So obviously the family, their partner, their extended family, work, that kind of situation, and they really don't leave themselves any time for them to rest or to do something that fills their cup and, being selfish in that regard. So, I did record an episode about self-worth and self-care, so that could tie a bit back to that. But that's definitely something that I would suggest, straight off the bat, anyone that's going through perimenopause or menopause, and really finding that they're struggling a little bit, I would really look at the nervous system and really looking at things like trying to support your sleep or making sure you're getting a good night's sleep, or, putting in those practices to get to bed early, and, support yourself in the lead up. I'd also, really look at your nutrition as well, and really making sure that you're eating, balanced, at least 3 main meals that are balanced, because often the blood sugar regulation throughout the day can actually create a bit of stability at night time for sleep. And I've found that personally myself. So if you're somebody that tends to skip meals, then I would make sure that you're actually having 3 balanced meals over the day. And, you can obviously see a practitioner to get some extra support with what a balanced meal looks like. That also, the other thing I guess to look at is, obviously we talk about sleep, we talk about nutrition, and talking about a little bit about mindfulness, or having just having that little bit of space for your mental capacity, I guess, to actually just have a little bit of quiet time, to really give yourself, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes each day, whether you do that first thing in the morning, or whether you do that at a certain time of the day where you know that you've got some space, or you're going to make that space because you know that you can get a bit overwhelmed, once the afternoon hits. So even making some time to do that as well. So that's, 3 sort of key things to start off with, but definitely see a healthcare practitioner to get some extra support that's a bit more tailored to yourself. Now, obviously that's the the nervous system work to really help to support yourself, which is going to help to support your adrenal glands and support your nervous system. So when I talk about the adrenal glands, it's actually one of the organs that sits on top of the kidneys, and that actually helps to support that secretion of our stress hormone called cortisol. And when we have cortisol levels, obviously we do need it for, that extra support of, fight or flight mode when we need it, in that, safety mode. But sometimes we get stuck in that where we're, constantly caught in that fight or flight mode. So that's where it's, the adrenals will start to release a lot more cortisol, and that's when we can get lots of high stress, ways, and we start to feel more anxious and overwhelmed, and, can't relax, when it's time to go to bed, those kinds of situations. So with the adrenals and the nervous system, it's really important to, keep them supported, because that's going to be, your core foundations. The other topic I guess I wanted to touch on with perimenopause and menopause is that it's actually almost like our second puberty. So obviously we go through puberty in the early teens, and then going through perimenopause and menopause is that second stage of puberty. And so it's again that shift of that roller coaster of hormones, which is having that impact on our emotions. But it's almost like what is a midlife crisis in a sense. And the way I wanted to share about that is talk a bit more, or be a bit more open-minded about this midlife crisis or identity crisis, because sometimes when we go through these hormonal shifts, often we have kids that are teenagers, so that's always creating a bit of rocking the boat a little bit. But it also can be time where there's a lot of separations and divorces, and that's often because particularly with women, they get to a certain stage of their life where they've always been giving to others, and now it's like, you don't have as much tolerance for other things. And maybe it's things that you've noticed over the years, that you've always, tried to help everybody else and, be a bit of a people pleaser. And then you'll be like, oh no, I don't want to do this anymore. So your whole mindset changes. And, you're going through this stage, your hormones are changing, your emotions are changing, your body's changing. And it's a bit of a identity crisis because of all this shifts going on. And what I'd really encourage people to do is to really notice, what attitudes have changed for you as you're getting through this perimenopause and menopause stage, because sometimes it gives us some clues as to things that we haven't actually addressed, that we've been maybe pushing to the side for many years, and we're not looking at, some of these maybe triggers or, wounds, or these are like really good gems to actually help us to step into who we really are, and, that authenticity piece. So sometimes we don't feel our authentic selves over so many years, and then we get to something, whether it's a big life event that happens that triggers us to start to look at ourselves at a deeper level, or it could be, through this perimenopause and menopausal phase as well. So that's just something to be mindful of and something to look at. And I definitely do see that happening. And I do notice even through Reiki healing sessions that I've had with some particular clients as well, that, these things start to come up in our sessions. And, maybe it's more about not expressing ourselves, or, not filling our cup, and feeling resentful to other people because of that as well. So it's it's just something to be mindful of, something that you could journal about, and just really take notice. And I guess it's people talk about healing or doing the inner work, and this is just like a bit of the tip of the iceberg to start to look into that. And then things will pop up, or you'll have different modalities that'll come up that might intrigue some interest, where you can get some support to help you delve a little bit deeper into that as well. So that's just something to also look at too. So I guess that's probably what I want to cover for this particular episode, because obviously perimenopause and menopause is such a vast, large area to discuss, and I'm happy to share some more insights into this later on. So feel free to reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, or send me an email. You can find the details on my website, but share with me if there's some extra topics that you wanted me to share as well. So I will wrap it up there, but what I will say is, if you are going through this perimenopause or menopausal phase, be gentle with yourself, because it's not easy. Just think about when you're a teenager and how it was, you weren't feeling yourself, you weren't too sure of who you were, and you're trying to find where you fit in the world. And getting to this second kind of second stage of puberty, you're kind of going through it again in a different light, and with some more wisdom and experience. So just be gentle on yourself. And I'd love for you to give me some feedback on this particular episode, or if you'd like to share it with somebody that may find this helpful, then please do so. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.